Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Mafex the Amazing Spider-Man 1/12 scale figure unboxing and review. Today we're taking a look at the comic book version of Venom. Now if you are heading down to the description, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon and join button so you're notified as soon as a brand new Mafex figure review goes live on the channel. As for the box art, it's a little bit busy, but I'm starting to think that maybe that's Mafex's thing. They are doing this on purpose. This is the aesthetic they were going for. They're trying to overwhelm us with bright colors and comic book art and figure photography and logos. Just all the logos. The Amazing Spider-Man, Venom, Mafex, and Medicom, plus Marvel in this top corner cover box. Up front, we've got an open window showcasing Venom and all of his accessories inside. There is a skyscraper in the background, you can see that just in the top left-hand corner, but that's not an insert, so you can't remove it and use that as a backdrop. If you want to do that, you're going to have to cut apart the box. Not something that I'm interested in doing. I prefer to keep my boxes as pristine as possible. On this side of the box, the artwork in the background is predominantly purple. It's interesting though that they're showing Venom with his tongue sticking out, because this figure doesn't actually come with a head sculpt with the tongue. So yeah, odd choice for your artwork, Mafex. On the other side, they've introduced some blue, more figure photography, a retro-looking Venom logo up top, and a more modern one down below. The more I see of this figure, the more excited I get to bust him out, so we'll be quick. Around the back, we've got some images of his head sculpts, his web effects, and Venom in various different poses. I do want to make sure I get my comic book references correct in this review, because in the Mafex The Amazing Spider-Man video, I mistakenly claimed one of his head sculpts was based off Todd McFarlane's artwork. Thank you to everyone who let me know that is not the case. That particular head sculpt is based off Mark Bagley's look for Spidey. I think it's safe to say with Venom though, this is pure Todd McFarlane and I am so here for it. First in-hand impressions, he's surprisingly heavy. This figure is a beast and I am loving the blue shading. What we're going to do now is get all of his accessories laid out in the light box and take a closer look at everything he comes with. Starting off with the display base first. It is just the tried and true Mafex clear plastic dynamic flight stand. The bottom part has 3 ports on it. The flight pole arm has screws so you can tighten it if you find it's getting loose over time. And in this configuration, I've got the waist clamp up top that also has a screw on it. So to make sure Venom is extra secure inside the waist clamp, pop him in place, close it up, then tighten the screw. I alluded to this in the Mafex Spider-Man review, but here it is. If you have multiple Mafex figures, you can take the additional articulated arms and plug them into the same base. So now I can have both Venom and Spidey in the air facing off against one another. Or if museum posing is more your thing, you can attach the straight pole and then you can slide the waist clamp up and down to adjust the height and make sure it's in the correct position. This pole can be plugged into any of the ports on the bottom of the base. And for some extra security, you can attach a crotch grabber to the non-screw version of the waist clamp so that Venom won't slide up and down when you have him posed on it. We do get 3 Venom head sculpts in total, one already installed on him out of the box of course, one where it looks like he's smiling, and an Eddie Brock transformation head. We will discuss all 3 of these in a lot more detail a little bit later. These are probably the best web effects I've ever seen from any company in any scale. They're nice and soft and flexible, we get 4 of them in total, and they're extremely well detailed with the little ribbed sections making it look like the web has wrapped around itself. Some of them have round ends, and they all have this crazy mess of webbing up top, so when you have Venom swinging on the flight pole, It comes across as though he's grabbed a bunch of webbing and it's going all over the place as he's swinging through the air. They're messy and chaotic and random, which is perfect for Venom. Lastly, he comes with a full array of hands. They're all pre-installed on these little plastic brackets, and I love that Mafex does this. It keeps them in pairs, which makes your life easier when you're trying to switch them out, and it ensures the ports on the hands stay open because they're made of a slightly softer plastic, and if they're not on the wrist pegs or these brackets, those ports tend to close up, making it very difficult to install them on the body. So the first pair of hands are the semi-gripping open palm hands with these spiky fingernails. The panels around the back are sculpted, that's not just white paint, and there's some blue shading on the surface. Next up, two closed fists, two web holding / web swinging hands, two maybe trigger finger hands. It looks like he could hold a gun in these hands. So if you're doing an Agent Venom custom, these might be the ones you want to go with. Or you could use them as a come here gesture hand, as though he's taunting Spidey. These are so freaking cool. We also get the magnetic feet and the magnetic hands. So if you have a metal surface in your display that you want to stick Venom to, the magnets are quite sturdy, so that should be possible. Out of the box, Venom comes pre-installed with two hands that look very similar to the other semi-gripping open palm hands. The thumbs are curled in a bit more and the nails look a touch less spiky. What we're going to do now is get Venom himself out here. Standing straight up and down in the light box, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. The two things that jump out at me right away both start with the letter P: paint and proportions. Those two things are extremely important, and those are the two things that, in this instance, Mafex excelled at. Sometimes they struggle with the former. I have seen their earlier releases, and paint wasn't their strongest suit, let's just say. They've buckled down on their paint department and they've managed to get their figures looking better than ever and consistently, which is the most important thing. This figure, visually speaking, now we're getting to the proportion side of things, he's big and bulky where he needs to be. Nothing is overdone. This stays true to the McFarlane art style for Venom. Seeing as though Todd's look for Venom is arguably the most iconic there is because it's the original look for him, going this route, yeah, it was the right call. Well done, Mafex. Up close and personal, kicking things off with Venom's first head sculpt. We will try out this one, but I can already tell you, this is my favourite of the three sculpts. My Venom is always going to be rocking this head in the display. There's something about the lack of nose and the huge McFarlane eyes and the curled edges to the mouth and the wide jaw and the spiky teeth, which are individual sculpted pieces, by the way, there are gaps in between them, and the bright red tongue that pops on an otherwise very black, white, and slightly blue figure that just works for me. And this is not your roided out bodybuilder Venom with the huge body and the teeny tiny head. This fits in proportion with the body, and that's probably another reason why I'm so drawn to it. This sculpt I'm not drawn to as much because it's missing that red, and the expression isn't anywhere near as crazy as the first sculpt. With a head tilt, you can get it to look mean. It's just not my favourite of the two. The detail is great all the way around though. The curls to the eyes, the paint is sharp, and the teeth are once again individual sculpted pieces with actual gaps in between them, and a wash over the top to highlight those gaps. For figure photography or the odd pose or two, transformation heads are a really nice bonus. I'm not going to go with the Eddie Brock head over and above either of the two masked head sculpts. It does have all the right details, though. The square jawline and the signature McFarlane Eddie Brock flat top with the hair curl around the front, the brown eyebrows, and the blue eyes. The only complaint I have is he's very saturated. He's extremely tan. It might not be coming across well on camera. When you get yours in hand, you'll see what I mean. The best part about this sculpt for me has to be the symbiote crawling up his neck, making it look like it's about to engulf his head. Back to my favorite head sculpt. I have seen some people's copies of this Venom where the paint for the white spider symbols isn't super clean. Luckily, mine is for the most part. There are a couple of misses, like right there and up the top on this leg around the back. But the spider symbols aren't just painted, they're also sculpted into the surface. So it's not like they grabbed a generic body and slapped a white spider symbol on there. This is a bespoke body specifically designed for Venom. I do have a little complaint though. We've got some seam lines underneath his armpits, and then we've got some mold lines right in front of them on both sides, going straight through the spider legs. Why? If this was already molded in two pieces, there should only be one seam slash mold line, right? I genuinely don't know why this has happened, but they're there and they're quite unsightly. Yes, from a distance, in a pose, they're not going to jump out too much, so I don't think they're deal breakers, at least not for me. This is pretty clever how they've sculpted and painted the back symbol up underneath the midsection, so when you hunch him forward, it doesn't just end abruptly. The logo looks like it's one continuous thing. That is something to watch out for around the front though. This symbol looks connected now, but if you use the top joint instead of the ball joint at the hips to rotate him, you'll break up the symbol, and that to me doesn't look right. Blue airbrush shading was a bold choice by Mafex. If it's not done right, it looks terrible. It cheapens the vibe of the figure and it throws everything off. We've seen other companies try this and fail. I know in the comics, Venom is often depicted with blue or purple highlights, but that's in the comics on a 2D printed page. Translating something like that to 1/12 scale in actual plastic, a real tangible thing, is tough, man. And because the sculpt work is as good as it is, with the defined traps and the big, broad, round shoulders and the pecs and the abs and how he narrows down at the waist with that V taper, then we have the chunky thighs. The blue shading just accentuates all of that sculpted detail. Leaving black in the crevices just adds a pop of contrast. And I know I've already said pop of color when describing the mouth. It's just the best way I can let you know what's going on here. So the blue shading gets a tick from me. I've seen some people do matte black repaints of this guy over on Instagram, and I can't deny it. Looks pretty good, very sleek. But black is a slimming color. Without the blue to balance it out and to highlight the muscle groups, it doesn't look right to me. Venom comes across too skinny. This was the right call, and in the end, I think it worked out. From a distance, you can't even really tell that that's what they've done. It looks like it's just light bouncing off the surface of the sculpted muscles. They're almost tricking us with the super subtle airbrushed blue. The legs we've already discussed are quite chonky. Then we get to the thinner ankles with this sculpted flap of plastic over the outside of the joint. This is something that more companies are starting to do. I'm happy to see it here with Venom because from the outside, that joint is far less noticeable as compared to the inside. If you're wondering how easy it is to swap out his feet with the magnetic ones, very is the answer to that. They're just on regular posts that plug into the feet at an angle. There's no mushroom pegs, no bullshit. You slide off the stock ones, then you can slide the magnetic feet on. The magnets are only really visible on the underside, so I'm tempted to just leave the magnetic feet on him. they still have the toe articulation, and now there's the added benefit of magnets underneath his feet. How many people can actually make use of the magnetic feet? I don't know. It's only there if you want it. If you have a metal roof in your cabinet or a rail you can stick him to, or your fridge perhaps, the feet alone are strong enough that they will hold him to that surface and you don't even have to worry about the hands. Speaking of the hands, unfortunately, the same thing cannot be said for them. We're down 2 magnets because on the feet we have 4 in total versus the 2 on the hands. And Venom is quite heavy, so these aren't strong enough to hold Venom to a magnetic surface on their own. You will have to use them in conjunction with the feet. For a quick side-by-side comparison, on the left, Mafex's comic book Todd McFarlane style Venom, and on the right, Hasbro's Marvel Legends SDCC exclusive, retro-carded, cel-shaded Spider-Man the Animated Series Venom, who towers over Mafex's release. It's always interesting to see not only 2 different companies' takes on the same character, but 2 different artists and art styles. In the animated series, Venom is this huge, roided out rage monster. And he has the blue and red squiggly lines all over him, which, the more you think about it, don't make a ton of sense. I don't much care. I'm glad they're on the figure because it's part of my childhood. I grew up watching Spider-Man the Animated Series. For Todd, he went more subdued and a lot sleeker for his interpretation of Venom. Which one do I prefer? I'm struggling to decide. Figure-wise, Mafex is superior, hands down, no question. But look-wise, something about the blue and red is calling to me. I'll have to let you know a little bit later if this Mafex Venom ends up being my new favourite in the collection. At least he's taller than the Marvel Legends retro-carded, cel-shaded animated series Spidey, who for a lot of people is their definitive 6-inch Spidey. He's bright, he's colourful, and he's well proportioned. This doesn't work super well for me because I'm a stickler for accuracy. I like my comic book figures to be next to other comic book figures and my animated series figures to be next to other animated series figures. This is more like it. Mafex next to Mafex, comic book Venom next to comic book Spidey. While they are based off 2 different art styles, McFarlane and Bagley, Spidey's look is McFarlane adjacent enough that I think they do complement each other. Even though I've had the Marvel Legends VHS animated series Black Suit Spidey and Carnage 2-pack since it dropped, believe it or not, this is my first time seeing either of the figures in hand because they've been sitting there, sealed in their VHS box. I don't know why I didn't open them, but I'm glad that I have now because Black Suit Spidey looks really cool. He's not perfect, the cel shading isn't for everyone, I'm partial to it. As you can see, he is taller than Venom, so in this instance, he's not going to work. Next to the animated series Venom, on the other hand, I reckon he will. This Carnage is rough, man. From the almost translucent red plastic that feels super cheap to the wonky proportions with the long forearms and the lack of defined shoulders. I may or may not have already ordered Mafex's Carnage. So when he does or doesn't, he's coming. When he gets here, we'll do another comparison next to Mafex's Venom. I think that will work a hell of a lot better than this does. Ooh, Marvel Legends Tom Hardy movie Venom. He is substantially taller than his comic book counterpart. Seeing the first ever look for Venom on the left compared to his most up-to-date live-action on-screen appearance, yeah, if you're putting together a display with all of the various different iterations of Venom over the years, this would be what the bookends look like. Going over articulation, starting off with his head sculpt. It is on a ball joint at the base of the neck, and an angled double ball peg up underneath the head itself. Looking forward to there, combined looking up to there, more than enough range for a web swinging pose. swivel, and pivot side to side. Even though his shoulders are massive, his arms will go up to there, going forward and back. There's a butterfly joint at the shoulder that hinges up and down. Swivel at the bicep, double bend at the elbow going the full way. Then for the wrist peg, it's a hinge and swivel. As we discussed earlier, if you use the midsection joint for swivel or tilt, you are going to break up the look of the spider symbol. So for me, if I want to do either of those two things, I prefer to use the joint down here at the waist. It's a ball joint. So you get swivel as well as tilt. Combined, crunching forward to there, going back to there, it does get quite gappy, so you'll have to work with that. Swivel and heaps of pivot side to side. His legs drop down at the hips, going forward to there. This is a softer plastic, so it will flex a bit. Going out to there, swivel at the upper thigh. Double bend at the knee, going past 90. Hinge and swivel for the ankles, good for forward and back, rotation, as well as ankle tilt. And lastly, toe articulation. Wrapping up on Mafex's comic book style McFarlane Venom. This may not be the Venom figure for everyone. If you want a big beefy boy like Ultimate Venom or Movie Venom or Animated Series Venom, he's going to probably feel a little bit light on. When you open the box and you pick him up, you're going to be like, what the hell? I thought Venom was massive, like Hulk size. If that's what you're after, skip this figure, save yourself the disappointment. If you're after a sleeker, more early comic book look for Venom, McFarlane style, like I already said, you're going to be extremely happy with this figure, because I know that I am. I like having multiple interpretations of my favorite characters in multiple different scales. This is now my most posable, most comic book accurate looking Venom, specific to Todd's art style. The animated one still has a place in my collection, and I said I would let you know which one I prefer. It's this one. Now that I've messed around with it more and I posed it and I've seen what it can do, I'm even more in love with this figure. So if you're on the fence and you're thinking, maybe he's not big enough, maybe he's not cool enough, maybe he's not detailed enough, hopefully this review has been able to help a little, and now you can decide if this figure is indeed for you. Now, if you are heading down to the description, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button if you like the sound of seeing your name in the end credits of my reviews. Like, comment, and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video.